Divine greetings, entities, energies, lovelies, bodies of light, seekers and sojourners of truth. All the 144, the chosen of the chosen few. We are in some exciting times right now. So I want to talk to us about these energies that we're feeling and how to deal with unprocessed emotions. I got 3 steps in how we can deal with these processed emotions, but there's also 3 steps within the first step. And you'll see why when I explain that to you. But first, I want to go ahead and speak to us about why we want to look at our unprocessed emotions. It's something we've already should have been doing over the past, I want to say, couple weeks. But right now we have Pluto taking us into the Aquarius sign, which is really giving us a deeper foothold into the Aquarian age. We're already in the Aquarian age, but Pluto's going to bring those revelations, the truth, and we want to be able to handle these truths. Some of us have already been getting hit with it. Those of us who are more intuitive and sensitive, we've already been feeling the vibrations. We don't have to wait till the day that Pluto hits into Aquarius. It's already in the last degrees of Capricorn, and that in itself is shaky because it's closing that out. It's the end of a cycle, so it's tearing all that down. So speaking of tearing down, that's what I wanted to talk about. So we have energies, entities that want to block us from our soul's ascension. You can check out the video that I spoke out about that was titled "They're Trying to Stop Our Soul Ascension," right? So that was one of them. And with that said, we have to be aware and we have to be guarded in ourselves. And I don't mean scary guarded, I mean prepared with what is to come. And no better preparation than to have yourself ready for what you can accept. I don't want to say expect, because expectations are also a part of fear. So we want to have acceptance. That's the love frequency. So with that, we want to note to self. Everyone's talking about new. We just had, spring equinox, new year. We just had the new moon, everything new. We're stepping into things that's new, and that's great, and that's good and awesome and all of that good stuff. But we cannot pour new wine into old bottles or vases, however you may say them. We need to clear out the old. So in order to do that, this is a step that people find people tend to skip that step. We just want to pour into positive things, and we don't want to do what's necessary. And what's necessary is to release, is to remove any resistance, is to tear down everything that you thought was true, everything you thought you knew, and everything you thought was true. That's the tearing down that needs to happen. The old paradigms are not going to fall by themselves. They're not going to come crumbling down by themselves. We have to tear down the illusion of separation by tearing it down within our own consciousness, within the constructs of our own mind. And so it's really an individual work. It's really about you taking the time to work in your soul and going within you and doing what must needs be done. I don't like to say what you need to do. But this process, there are 3 steps. So with that said, I wanted to make sure I kind of give that little intro first so that we understand why is it so important right now, with everything that's coming up. Why can't I just skip to pouring in all my good stuff? Because plain and simple, as conduits of this light and energy, when you have resistance in your light, when you have blockage in your light, in your wire, I want to say, then it's hard for that light to flow through. It's hard for whatever it is you're trying to manifest and bring through to come through because you have it blocked up. So it's really hard to transit through these times in a successful way that is meaningful. I'm not talking about temporary success. I'm not talking about surface level success. I'm talking about in-depth wealth and success of the soul, right? So with that, what does it take? Let's get to these 3 steps. So we're talking about processing our unprocessed emotions, because that's what holds us up, because those unprocessed emotions are lodged in your subconscious in the back somewhere there. And we want to attend to that, right? Because then we're going to act out of these unprocessed emotions when things come up. When Pluto brings the revelations of truth, we won't be that prepared, right? Like what the bird said. So what it is the processed emotions, what we want to do in processing them, there are 3 steps. There is identification. So identify, let me just say it this way: identify, incubate, and integrate. Those are the 3 steps. And now within the first step alone, there are 3 important steps, because to identify, it's usually the hardest step. It's the first step, and it's usually the hardest for people to identify. That's why when you go to AA meetings, they tell you to say, hi, my name is Tom and I'm an alcoholic, because they need you to identify what you are. If you don't identify it to yourself, it's not for everybody else, but if you don't identify it for yourself and you don't resonate with that identification, then you won't know it. So how do you know what to fix? How do you know what to process, what to work on, what to help? So the first step is identification. So let's just look at that and break down the 3 steps of that alone. So the 3 steps in identification is retrace, is review, and retrieve. So as we retrace, we get to the retracing, we need to know that the first steps is from where it all started. So we need to retrace and go back. The first steps from where it all started, and where did you first get this feeling? So the question to ask yourself is, where did I first get this feeling? And just intuitively what comes up, that's what you want to look at. It may not be the actual first feeling. It may be a little bit further than that, but at least you have a starting point. You have somewhere to measure it. And then when you ask yourself that, I guarantee you, if you just stay open, it'll take you. If you follow that thread, it may take you to the core or the root of where that particular feeling started, right? Because there's going to be different scenarios, but that feeling is going to be the same. Let's just say it's the feeling of shame. Right? When did you first feel that shame? Let's say that's the unprocessed emotion. When did I first feel this feeling? You may not even have a name for the feeling yet. It's when you start digging, then you'll find a name. At the end of the identification process, you'll have a name. So you don't really have to focus on the name. I'm just throwing that out as an example. Let's say it's something that was shame that you were feeling. And you ask yourself, where did I first feel that feeling? It's going to carry you to whenever you felt that feeling, if you're being honest with yourself. And it may carry you to the core of it if you continue to follow that thread. So the key question is, where did I first feel this feeling? And just go wherever it intuitively takes you. The second step is to review where you played a part. Where did you play a part in this? Meaning, how did you internalize it? How did I internalize this? And what was your expectations? Okay, so that's what you want to review. So once you get the feeling, now you're kind of picking at it. Let's look at it. How did I internalize it? Yes, it happened, but I really need to look at how I internalized it, because that's going to tell you how you named it eventually, right? So how did I internalize that? What did that mean to me? Yes, I felt this feeling, but now what did it mean to me at that point in time? And what was my expectation? What did I expect? Because your expectation is also what leads you to how you internalize it. And the expectation is usually based in fear. Expectation is a fear-based feeling, right? And so once you do that, the next step, the third step, is to retrieve. Now we're getting to being able to name it. Retrieve what you have called it. So once you've internalized it and you've checked out your expectation, the name is going to come to you. What did I call it? This is what I call it. I called it betrayal. I called it this, whatever you called it, right? What was the label that you gave it, and what was so intolerable about it? That's what you want to retrieve. All right. So what's the label that you gave it, and what was so intolerable about it? And you really want to pay attention to what was intolerable too, because and that will stem from how you internalized it. However you internalized it, it's going to show you how it was so intolerable. I internalized it this way because this was so intolerable. I can't tolerate that. There's a feeling that you had that makes it that intolerable feeling. And then what did I label it? What do you call it? Because guess what you labeled it, this is where the ego plays a part. And the ego, I know I didn't mention the ego earlier, but the ego plays an important part. We are, with this step right here, these 3 steps in the identification step, it is helping us to kind of get under the radar of the ego, so to speak, because the ego gave it a good story, a good narrative. Once you internalized it, the ego, as your protector, came and protect you and gave you a narrative, and the ego is the one who kind of gave it the name. This is how it feels, so I'm gonna name it this, right? And I'll talk about that on another day when we break down the ego and its part that it plays in naming things. So once you get the label, now you're getting the story, the narrative that the ego has told you, that has kept you all this time. And that's why you couldn't find the true identity under what you originally felt, because you had given it a label. You gave it a name. So if you go looking for it, you're going to find it's like a filing system. Whatever you named it, it's in the filing system under that name. So if you named it betrayal, but it really is shame, right? If you named it betrayal, you up here looking under the bees for betrayal, and you're not going to find shame. You're not going to find the original feeling, the true identity of what it is. So this is how we hide from ourselves. And this is why we need this important identification step to really process the true emotions. Because if we don't truly identify it, we're processing something else that is not true. So those are the 3 steps of identifying. Once you identify it, once you bring it forward and identify it, your next step in the 3 steps of the process, which is identify, incubate, and integrate. So now we've done our identification. ID, check. The next step is to incubate. Incubate means, and what I hear when I hear incubate is like relax, relate, release, just take it all in. Incubate is exactly what it sounds like. Sit with it. When you're incubating in your mother's womb, you are there for 9 months incubating, right? Sit with it. It's time to take care, right? TLC. Give it some TLC. Don't beat up on yourself. Once you identify it, it's time to give it some TLC. Give it some love. Give it some forgiveness. Give it some compassion while you just sit with there. Nurture it just like a mother would nurture a baby in its womb. You give it love, compassion, all of that. Give it that, whatever it is. If it's shame, if it's guilt, if it's jealousy, whatever the true feeling is, just nurture it. Just incubate it and sit with it. And then that way, when you sit with it, you kind of relax your tension with it a little bit. And it allows you to really honor your feelings for what it really was, whether bad or good. It doesn't matter. We're not looking at a bad or good. We're just looking at the feeling, the emotion, which is energy in motion. So once you incubate it, right, your next step after you incubate it is to integrate it. And in the integration process, we want to realize this is a step where now that you've gotten what you needed to get and you've taken your time, you incubated with it, you got to know it. I'm hearing the song, getting to know you, getting to know all about you. This is how you really know thyself on a real level without lying to yourself or hiding under the narratives, right? So just incubating with it, sitting with your discomforts of whatever it is, but you're honoring it. You're not trying to turn away from it. That's why it's so important to incubate it, because a lot of times we may get the identification and we turn away from it because it's still uncomfortable and we don't want to hear it. We don't want to feel it. But when you incubate with it, you really taking the time to kind of just sit with it and coddle it, not to take it in a way to say, to make an excuse for it, but you want to take it in so that you can really receive it, really get to know yourself and know this feeling that this is how I really felt. And it's okay because it's helping me to understand who I am right now, which brings me to that 3rd step, integration. So now you can take it and you can integrate it into who you are now and who you want to be, who you will to be in the future, that new you that you're trying to step into, right? And so at this point, when you're integrating it, you're taking the time to realize, with your real eye here, real eyes, to recognize, to re-know, and to remember, meaning to reconnect. So you're doing, if you notice, I just gave like 3 steps in each one of these steps, which is exactly what it is. So it actually should be like 9 steps because it's 3 steps within a step. And I'll review that right after I explain this. So with that, you're able to take what you now know, you've incubated it, and now you can take that and place that in and integrate it with, this is who I am now. Because I had these feelings back then and I sat with it, and now I really know it. Now I can truly process it, and I know where it plays a part in who I am now. Now I know where that miscommunication, the misconstruing that has been taking place, the misconceptions, right, that skewed our perception to cause us to be reactive in the way that we are with that feeling now. And now we no longer need to be reactive, because now we understand why we integrated it in that way. We understand how we internalized it. And in the incubation process, we loved on ourselves enough to know that we don't need that anymore. We don't need that egoic protection anymore, because you understand that that internalization back then does not stand true for today and how you want to progress in moving forward. So now that's what you're doing as you're weaving it in and integrating it back into who you are, the true feeling that you've identified, not the false feeling. And now with your awareness of that true feeling, you now know how to maneuver as you move forward. If something kind of ignites that feeling or triggers that feeling, you now know how you can process it, because you took the time to process it just now. So then you'll be able to quicken yourself to it more and more, right? So with that, that is a good part of the integration. This is who I am now. Whatever that was, I'm taking it in. Oh, this is why I was like that. I get that. And integrating it with the future self is like, but now I don't need that. Now that I'm aware of it, I know that I don't need to internalize it in that way. That was an old identity, and I no longer identify with that anymore. So these are the 3 steps of identify, incubate, and integration that you can do to process your emotions, your unprocessed emotions that are really holding us up from moving forward into that new life, into the new age, the new earth, the Aquarian age. In order for us, and this is really important, in order for us to not fall into the shadows of these ages, that we're already kicking the shadows habit. Those of us who are really working with our egos and doing our soul work, we're already kicking that habit. And so from the age of the Aquarian, age of the Ram, and the Piscean age, we're extracting those shadows out. Those of us who are really doing the work and getting ready for this cosmic shift, right? And the divines and the cosmos and our ancient ancestors, everybody's having a whole celebration waiting for us to come through. So we got to come through. And part of that is breaking these down, tearing down everything that you thought was true. And how do we do that if we don't know how to process our emotions? We have to be able to catch these emotions when they're triggered, right? So this is very, very important, not just for it's important on a personal level, individual level, collective level. It's important on so many levels, but know that it starts with self. So we have to work on it for self first, in order for us to be that change in the world, in order for us to create the change that we want to create in our own life, world, and affairs, in order for us to be true in the true timeline reality and be able to get into those true timelines, into the new age successfully in our soul ascension. This is what we got to do. We got to drop remove the resistance. We have resistance because of these unprocessed emotions. We have unhealed wounds because of these processed emotions. We have demons that attach to the unhealed wound because of these unprocessed emotions. So hint, hint, we really need to get rid of these unprocessed emotions. As you can see, they are holding up our soul. They're blocking us. So with that, let me do a review wrap up so that you see these 9 and see the numbers 3, 6, 9 are very important too, key numbers. But it's 3 steps, but as you can see within the 3 steps, it's like 3 little steps within that. So there's 9. So as I review that, the first step under identity is to retrace, review, retrieve. That's the first 3. And then the next step under incubate is really for us to relax, relate, release. That's the next 3. And in the next step of integrate is for us to realize, recognize, and remember in order to integrate. Remember that we're a part of the remembering. Remember that you are a part of something bigger. That's what we need to remember. Reconnect and know that I am love. I am a part of love. I am connected to love. And in that remembering, that's where we're going to be able to do what must needs to be done. So it is really important to be a part of the remembering. You are the remembering. We are the remembering. And this process helps us to remember who we are, because forgetfulness is the number one cause of sin. So if you're going to keep making mistakes, keep on being forgetful. But when we are being intentional, we are remembering who we are. We are tapping in and we're processing our emotions. So this is a step that this is something a lot of people don't talk about, but it's very important. The emotional aspect. Everything else is happening out there in the world, and we tend to neglect the emotional aspect. People think about the mental, the spiritual, the physical, all these other aspects of our lives. Right now, we're getting hit by the financial, the relational. These are the hits that we're taking. Vocational, people losing jobs, But all of that is surface level. The real work where we need to be working is spiritual, mental, and emotional. And most importantly, emotional. Really get in touch with your emotional side. That is the feminine aspect. That is the feminine energy that is coming in to have a sacred union with the misappropriated masculine that has gone wrong for so long under the patriarchal rule, which is coming back to an equilibrium by pouring in all this feminine energy. It's all energy. So we just have to understand the energies of everything. So with that, faithfully, this was very helpful. Please why do I forget to say this at the beginning? Please subscribe, share. Subscribe, and share so that the algorithms could do what they do. We can get into these energetic algorithms and get it out there to people who really need to hear this, who are trying to do their soul work and want to know, what are the steps? What are the steps? How can I process? What do I need to do? How do I get into that new earth? I didn't know that I needed to release and remove resistance. And let me tell you, that's the most important thing. I can't say that enough. And I'm going to talk about it and say that even more in these days. The most important thing is to remove your resistance, tear down old constructs that you thought were true, those righteous thoughts that you thought were true, because they're going to feel right. But we got to tear them down. Right? So I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, if there's more, I will always give more. There may be a part 2 to this. With that said, love and light to you all. Each one, reach one, teach one. If you don't know where to start in your big, beautiful heart. Shine your light from the inside out and be the candle that lights the next one and the next one and the next one. You are the love that lights the truth. Peace, love, and light.